In this video, we're talking angles, we're talking depth, and we're talking post-production as we take this before image to this final shot. What's up, my friends? My name is Pi. Welcome to SR Lounge. This is your place for no-nonsense photography education with a little bit of nonsense. Just kidding. Let's dive straight in. So look, you're looking at a straight-on shot, what I call the walk-up shot. I'm sure a lot of people call it the walk-up shot, but of my friend Derek. You guys can look him up. We'll link him below. Derek is a fitness model here in Los Angeles. Check him out. Bring him out for a shoot. He's awesome. So I walked in this scene and I saw interesting light and also this fencing, okay? So the first thing that we might think is like, let's just put our subject in position and start shooting. And we end up with this. Not only is it not super interesting because of the angle, well, it also looks like Derek's in prison. Derek said he wanted to look tough and edgy. He did not say that he wanted to look like he was in prison. So that's a fail. But before you take this shot, I want you to kind of analyze the scene because one simple adjustment will make it that much better. We're going to talk about why. So that adjustment is actually to move into the fencing and actually shoot right along with it. And when I do that, we get this shot. So this is once again a raw image. Both these are raw, unedited. And what happens is, well, let's break it down into steps. Number one, the light in this scene is it's a flat light because it's coming from directly behind the camera. So we're not getting a lot of interesting light patterns because the light is flat. Whereas once we change the camera's position, the light is now coming from the right side and we're shooting from the left side right against that fencing. So now we can see highlights against all the features of his face. We can see shadows going down into the backside. We can see highlights and shadows on the fencing. We see a lot more of a dramatic and cinematic image simply because of an angle change. That's it. So in fact, if you actually look at the information on these two images, you will notice that I'm shooting on an EOS R with a standard kit lens. You don't need anything crazy, guys. If you want to create depth, you actually don't need a lens that opens up to f1.2 or whatever it is. You don't need anything crazy. All you need to do is adjust your position, get in closer to your subject, bring some kind of foreground elements into your shot. And you'll notice that this is shot at 1/200 f5 and ISO 100. This one is using the exact same settings, 1/200 f5 and ISO 100. But that's crazy, right? Because we're at f5 and yet we see a good amount of depth. That brings me to the next piece of this. So the next reason why this is more interesting, step 2, is using leading lines, okay? So what happens is as soon as we get next to that fencing, we now use that fencing as a line that guides us visually through the image and into our subject. This is what creates that sense of depth, is that along with the fact that we're relatively close to our subject, we still get a good amount of depth and blur to the shot while still keeping him completely tack sharp. On that 24-105, I'm close to a 35mm focal length. So if you're using a prime, that would be the prime that I would go to for a shot like this, but we're roughly at around 42mm, so just slightly zoomed in. So with that, we've taken a rather boring walk-up shot and we've turned it into something far more interesting and, well, quite a bit less prison-like, if I'm just being honest. So now let's dive into post. Now I am currently working on developing our mood pack. It's the latest pack for Visual Flow presets, and these are lighting condition based presets. Much less like the typical presets you'd find out there and much more like intelligent software. Now, while I'm using the preset, I'm going to walk you through all the different settings and adjustments. So if you guys don't have them or you feel like making your own, well, at least you can create something similar by simply following along. Okay, so from the mood pack, I'm going to choose soft light. Why? Because the image was shot in soft lighting. So from here, we have this very cinematic and warm look to the image, and this is kind of what the mood pack creates, this rustic cinematic feel. We're just gonna make a few tweaks, okay? So let me walk you through what's exactly happening right now, then we're gonna make some adjustments. Let's go to the majority of the special sauce. So under the tone curve, you're gonna notice a curve where we're flattening out highlights and flattening out shadows. This is actually what creates that matte look in the image. So if you notice, if I turn off the curve, we lose the matte effect. The blacks being clipped or basically going to a dark gray is done by pulling up from the black point down here. So as soon as I bring it back down, you'll notice that it no longer clips those to grays. Same thing with the highlights. If we want whites up here, we can do that. But otherwise, if we bring the white point down, it'll clip the whites to just a bright gray. So it creates a subtle matte finish. From there, we're just adding a little bit of contrast to the image. Now we've got a lot of magic happening here, and most of it is going to be, well, there's a lot all over the place, to be honest. So hues, we're shifting everything on the reds and oranges. We're kind of going towards this. Well, the reds are going towards orange, the oranges are going a little bit more towards reds, the yellows are going towards orange. So everything kind of pulls into this nice rustic kind of color tone. We're bringing the greens more towards the yellow side, and then the aquas and blues are going towards teals, okay? Saturation, we're pulling everything down quite a bit. Greens go down heavily, aqua, blues, all those get pulled down quite a bit to create, again, sort of muted color tones. And then luminance, we're dropping most everything just a little bit. You guys can pause and dial this stuff in if you'd like. The next bit of magic is under split toning. I'm adding a little bit of color tone in this range right here. So this is kind of in the, again, the orange range and kind of tans to the image. We're adding a little bit to the highlights, a little bit to the shadows. Not too much else going on. I have a little bit of post-crop vignetting going on, a little bit of adjustments in camera calibration as well. But that's how we're getting to a more rustic look in the image. So from here, all I'm gonna do is start adjusting the temperature. Okay, so I'm gonna take it more towards this side. I'm actually gonna bring a little more greens into it. So I'm gonna shift the tint down, namely because we're shooting on a Canon. Canon's gonna have a lot more pink hues to it. So I'm actually gonna shift it a little more towards the greens and then bring the temperature up just a bit. So somewhere around here. Now this is the fun part, and you can do this with any preset that you have. It doesn't really matter what look you're going for. This technique works so long as you have highlights and shadows on your subject, okay? So highlights on the skin, we're gonna basically pull those out by bringing the highlight point up. And this is something we often forget to do, or we don't know that we can do this from post. So I can just brighten just the highlight areas of his face. So the key to this is making sure that the face is in the highlights. I'm gonna bring up the white point as well to kind of, again, exaggerate that highlight on the face. Now don't worry about the hand because we're gonna fix that in just a moment, okay? So let's bring up the white point just a little bit more, maybe to like right here. I'm gonna actually lift the blacks a little bit as well, and the shadows a little bit too, okay? I'm also gonna reduce a little bit of the contrast in the image. And from here, we can kind of tweak and get to a final white balance now that we have the right brightness of kind of skin tone and everything. Okay, so this is looking really cool. I'm gonna make a couple tweaks and adjustments. I think I want to adjust and straighten out the grate just a little bit right there. Actually, you know what? For some reason, it feels like it lost something when I did that. Like it lost a little bit of its, it has this imperfect nature to it. I like that. It has this kind of perfectly imperfect look, and I'm gonna keep that because as soon as I correct that, it kind of feels a little bit too produced. So that looks fantastic. What I'm gonna do now is actually add a little bit more clarity. This is mid-tone contrast. We're gonna add a little more texture to give it a little more grit and add a little bit more dehaze actually as well, okay? This gives it a little bit extra. You know what? I'm gonna leave that actually where it's at. So right here is good. Okay, so now let's get to some local adjustments because there's some tweaks that I want to do to actually get the image just to pop a little more. One, I want the focus to be on his face. So I'm going to go ahead and select a graduated filter, and I'm using the Visual Flow retouching toolkit. So again, at any point you can pause the video and dial in the exact settings so that you can follow along. Okay, so I'm going to pull this in right from here. And what I want to look at first is just the shadows to this left to the right side. I'm not too worried about the hand yet. I'm going to make adjustments there. If I start pulling that down too much, I'm going to affect the face a little bit too much. So let's bring that back to about here. Next, I'm going to do another graduate filter on the right side, and we're going to kind of make the right just a little bit darker as it kind of pulls into him as well. Now let's grab another adjustment brush this time, and we're going to do the same burn, but this time I'm going to target it so it's just on the hand, okay? Now it's okay if I get some of the grate in there. It's not going to be too big of a deal, but I'm just going to pull the hand down, okay? Now if you start noticing that the grate starts looking odd, then we're going to just subtract it off. But I want the hand to drop in brightness. Holding down Alt or Option, I'm going to pull this right over the grate so we get the brightness back. And again, for all these adjustments, I'm just using my mouse. That's the beauty of Lightroom, is you don't have to be completely precise with everything. It's a little more forgiving when we're making more subtle adjustments over the raw file. Okay, if I mess up, I'm just gonna go back over that little spot. If I mess up again, I'm gonna stop drinking. I'm just kidding, I didn't drink. It just looks like I did because I'm having a hard time getting that edge. Okay, that looks nice. Now I can actually further exaggerate it by doing a radial filter and just pulling it right over the face, okay? So this go around, we're pulling attention all into the face, and then now I can brighten up the image, subtract a little bit of the contrast, and we're getting to a really nice place right here. So look at this kind of cool cinematic toning that we've created so far. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna zoom into the eye. So what I'm gonna do now is go to my adjustment brushes, and once again, I'm gonna click into the retouching toolkit, and under retouching flow. So this is designed to follow a retouching workflow. So what I'm gonna do is select eyes whiten, and then we're gonna go ahead and drop that in. Again, if you don't have the settings, well, you can pause and dial them in, save it out. Thank me later. No, seriously though, please shoot me a message. I like to hear from you guys. Press new. I'm gonna go down and we're gonna go to intensify iris, okay? So this is the adjustment settings for that. I'm gonna paint this literally right over the iris, and it's gonna make his iris kind of pop. We're gonna get it right over that highlight as well. And now I'm gonna zoom out and make sure that we didn't go too far. You'll know if you've gone too far because when you go back to a thumbnail view, the eyeball pops out like he's an alien, okay? So if the eyeball is popping out like aliens in all of your images, you've gone too far with the eyes. So at this point, this looks absolutely awesome. We get this really cool cinematic look, and we're done. Now I want you to compare this to this original shot. So look at the amount of visual interest that we added, and we couldn't have done any of that in post unless we actually created direction to the lighting, unless we actually shifted our angle. This will work with any camera. It doesn't matter whether it's a DSLR, it doesn't matter whether you're using your phone. In fact, if you guys are following me on @BornUnCreative on TikTok, you'll see I did a similar shot to this with just the phone in this exact same scene with Derek, and it looks awesome. So follow me while you're here @BornUnCreative on TikTok. Meanwhile, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. We're noticing that we have tons of subscribers, but without notifications on, you guys don't get notified of the new videos that we upload. Meanwhile, comment below on the things that you'd like to learn next, and well, I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.